Countless commenters noted that Americans will approach anyone and start up a conversation. As a person from the U.S., I think it's actually like a pretty positive stereotype to have that we're
Mhm.
like friendly people, Um, it may not be as cool as being like European and being like, oh, I'm smoking a cigarette, like I'm aloof, don't talk to me. But I think just in terms of kindness, it's not a bad way to be.
No.
Um, so some of the other responses are they're incredibly loud, but incredibly friendly. Another said, when you know somebody is an American when you can hear them before you can see them.
Also, you know that they are my 3-year-old. Oh my god, this child has become so loud.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he's exploring, volume. It's his new favorite, thing to experiment with.
Oh, just
Yeah, he starts at a normal volume and then just, and it gets real loud, and oh my god, it was like traveling with a wild animal. What fun.
oh. I my son his magic trick when he was young was his inability to shut a door without completely slamming it and almost ripping it off the hinges. So
Mhm.
every morning, like, I go to bed slightly nervous that every morning I'm gonna wake up at 5:45 hearing his bedroom door just
Wham!
whack. Yeah, like
Yeah.
smack, and then you wake up like, what the hell's going on? And then you hear the footsteps, you go, okay. And like hold my crotch because if he's gonna jump on the bed, that's where he's landing every time. Like being the parent of a 5-year-old, like I should just wear a jock strap every day because that's just heat-seeking missile for the crotch.
Yes. Children are impossible sometimes.
Yeah.
That's so sweet sometimes.
They also said that Americans describe distances in driving time as opposed to miles or kilometers.
Oh, that's interesting. Yes. That's true.
Yeah, we usually like, oh, how you get to downtown? Like, I don't know, it's like 45 minutes right now,
Right.
or
If someone gave me a distance, I wouldn't know, how what to do with it. And
yeah.
certainly if it was in a metric system.
Oh God. I think they
Don't
just make that up. The
con
kilometer, it's not actually a thing. They just say it to confuse us.
Yes, 'cause confuse us it does.
Because as an American, I believe the whole world is just acting, you know, for our reaction because we're the
Yeah, it's
only
like
people.
it's a Truman Show situation.
Yeah. That did remind me of how well they nailed it on SNL when they did the Californians and
Yes.
people would just talk about traffic and how they got there. That would
Right.
and it was like, oh God, yeah, like, and I just remember they're like, how did you get here? You were in Marina Del Rey. And I'm like, oh my God, yeah, how did they get, like, I was intrigued to know how they got from Marina
Right.
Del Rey to Bel Air
Right.
and at 2:45, you're not getting there. It's going to take you 4 days, Yeah. The people at Upworthy, it's funny. They have an office in Hollywood, and I live
Mhm.
in Long Beach. And as the crow flies, it's 30 miles. But as traffic goes, it's a little tough. But they got me a hotel room because they're having an event, and they're just gonna put me in a hotel like I'm going to San Francisco or something. You're like, oh, Long Beach. Oh, geez, you must be like I'm in the same county, people. Uh, they also said the way to tell Americans is visible tattoos on otherwise, quote,
Oh,
normal looking people are a common indicator.
interesting.
Americans love tattoos.
That's a good one.
So, Allison, have you done much traveling overseas?
It's been a number of years, but I've been to Europe a handful of times, and that's about it. Though that's the extent of my overseas travel.
Have you ever stuck out for being an American anywhere? Or
I would like to think that I blend in, but I don't know if I do or not. But I remember, and this is gonna be insulting. But I remember befriending a girl in France. This was back in the 90s. And so this was in France, but she was Dutch and we were speaking English.
mm,
And she said the way that she can tell Americans is because they're overweight.
yeah.
Did that answer come up?
Actually, I think it was such an obvious answer that it wasn't wasn't said that often in the Reddit, because Reddit
Right.
commenters are the ones that make it to the top. Tend
Mhm.
to be things that aren't stereotypical.
Right. Yes. Um, and I remember, I don't know if this is still the case, but like periodically you would hear, if you're an American, depending on what's going on, globally, like if you're an American traveling, you should put a Canadian flag on your luggage. Or, I think certainly anything Trumpy on your luggage would indicate that you're an American at this point.
Yeah, the big "Make America Great Again" backpack.
Right.
Someone.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I remember the first time I went to England, which was in 2003, and my wife had lived there for like a year. So she just like grilled me before we left and was like, "You are not going to look at anybody while you're sitting on the tube, which is their subway. You're not gonna talk to anybody on the tube. When you get out of the tube and you go up the escalator, you're gonna stand on one side. If you're walking up, you
Mm.
walk up on the left side." And like there are all these things, mostly public transportation related, and mostly like, don't be yourself, don't be chatty, don't 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 be
Right.
friendly, wipe that smile off your damn face, grab an umbrella, and I thought that she was being a little extreme, but then when I got there, I realized, oh yeah, I'm glad she told me. But then after 2 weeks of being in England, I realized that England had an effect on me, because I was sitting in a pub, not a
Mm.
bar, but a
That's
pub.
their bar, right? Yeah.
Yes, that's where they.
Were
That's
you
where
having a
they.
pint?
I was having a pint and watching a match on the pitch, and
Mm.
the game started on schedule,
Oh, good.
and the can of Budweiser was in an aluminium
Mm.
cup.
Were you watching footy?
A lot of footy happening. There was a lot of footy on the pitch. We were listening to Oasis, and when towards the end of the night, a group of Americans walked in to the pub, and it was like, oh God, what is that noise? And I realized that being around more like chill people or whatever, I realized like I could hear the Americans a mile away, because I had,
Mhm.
so it was kind of funny that I realized, oh yeah, that's what we sound like. But it took 2 weeks in the other country for me to have that.
Right. 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 I do suspend, now that I think back on the last time I was abroad. So I said that it had been a number of years, but actually Daniel, or Danville as we've nicknamed him, and I went
Mm.
we went to Paris in 2016, 2015. Who cares? It was around that time. For 6 days, which is not long enough. Somehow at that time, it was like, what a luxurious trip this will be, 6 days. But it's like, it was so fast. So I would advise go in for longer if you possibly can, because with jet lag and all that, it was like, I felt like I was there for like a blink. But anyway, I think that we probably stood out as Americans with tipping, because
Oh.
they don't, that gratuity is like built in, that you don't really tip over there. And so I remember feeling like I am doing something different than what is normal.
Yeah.
I'm going my own way here.
I remember being in the pub and
Mm.
being away from Americans or whatever for a while. I remember hearing somebody, and he was from like Georgia, but his accent sounded vaguely American, and I was like, "Oh my God, an American!" And it was just like,
Yeah.
"You're from my country," and he's like, "Yes, yes," and I was like, "I'm from California," and and it was this whole like we were
Right.
next door neighbors suddenly,
Mm-hmm.
and
Yes. Yeah. I remember things like that.
yeah.
Yeah. I also remember trying to speak French and thinking, I know they speak English. This conversation would be so much easier if I just spoke English, because then I would actually be able to understand what they're saying and they would understand me. But instead, I'm going to insist on using my crappy French, and then I won't understand what they're saying. They'll barely understand me, but I'm going to do it, goddammit. And it was like very frustrating to my sister, because I would ask for directions in French and then I wouldn't understand the response. And then she would be like, what? This is futile. but I did it anyway.
You had to stick it out. I remember
I
when
had to.
I was on a plane flight one time. It was like a 6-hour flight from LA. I don't know. I was going somewhere on the East Coast. And I was sitting on the flight, and a woman sitting next to me didn't speak any. She spoke very, very limited amount of English, but she spoke Spanish. And so I said a couple things to her in Spanish, in my rudimentary Spanish, which I'm okay. You know, I can get around a bit. I took 4 years in high school or whatever. But then oh, you speak Spanish. And then she wanted to speak in Spanish with me like the whole flight. And then it was like hurting my brain to keep going and listening.
Yeah.
And keep translating. Like, oh, see. Oh, see. And I was just like, oh, that was the dumbest thing. Never act like you can speak a foreign language, Todd.
Yeah, I know. Well, that's another thing I realized is that I would meet people abroad who would say they can speak a tiny bit of English and they would be fluent, basically. Whereas, like, when I say I can speak a tiny bit of another language, no, I literally mean only a tiny bit. You don't understand how limited I am. That makes me feel very American, to not be fluent in a number of languages.
Yeah.
I
That's
wish I were.
That's how I could tell you were American.
My lack of faculty with a number of languages.
Yeah, I was just like saying, I was like, gesundheit, like after you sneezed. And you're like, what does that mean?
Right. I looked at you. I was so confused.
Yeah.
And then I tried to tip you. It was weird.